Hey, I'd like to welcome everybody to our council meeting. It is Tuesday, May the 20th, 2025, and it's 7 p.m. We're kind of in a unique position tonight. We do have quorum in that we have three of us here. For those that weren't watching our last council meeting, Councillor Aaron Nordoff tendered his resignation because he has, effective as of last Saturday, he moved out of the township and lives in Strathroy now and doesn't own any other land, so he's not eligible to be a counselor. And Councillor Kingma is under the weather tonight. So you've got three of us, and hopefully we can get through it. So I ask for your patience. And it's 7:01, and we'll call this meeting to order. And before we get started, I just want to take a moment to say that this past week we lost somebody in the community, Adrian DeBrun, who represented everything that was good about the Adelaide Metcalfe Township. He was dedicated to community service. I knew him prior to being on council through the farm insurance sector, and he served on council for more than 20 years, and at that time he was also a deputy mayor, and we'd like to express our condolences to his family. So having said all of that, between the three of us, is there any declaration of pecuniary interest or general nature thereof? Seeing none then, we have the agenda before us. We have a recommendation that the agenda for May 20th, 2025, meeting of council be approved as presented. Mover and a seconder. Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, you've had a chance to read the minutes from May the 5th, the previous council meeting, and we have a recommendation. Are there any errors or omissions, first of all? Seeing none, that we have a recommendation that the minutes of the Adelaide Metcalfe Council meeting held on May 5th, 2025 be adopted as presented. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor? Guess we're just going to pass it back and forth here tonight. So okay, the next item on the agenda is item 6, delegations and timed events. The first one is the Drainage Act, quarter revision regarding the Locker Heman drain. And we are going to open that. We recommend that council sit as the quarter revision under section 97 of the Drainage Act as amended to consider the Locker Heman drain. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, this quarter revision is pursuant to the report prepared by R. Dobbin Engineering, Inc., dated March 11th, 2025, which was considered and adopted at the consideration meeting held on April 7th, 2025, and pursuant to Bylaw 3 of 2025, which received provisional reading by council. The assessment schedule was revised and circulated through a memorandum dated April 23rd, 2025, issued by R. Dobbin Engineering. Section 51(1) of the Drainage Act provides that the decision of the Court of Revision can be appealed to the Drainage Tribunal within 21 days from the date of the Court of Revision. The final day of appeal is Tuesday, June 10th, 2025. Okay, first up, we've seen this information before. I'd just like to ask the clerk if the township has received any written appeals to the schedule of assessment.
Through the mayor to members of council, we have received no written appeals.
Okay, thank you. And to anyone in the gallery here tonight, if anyone wishes to appeal the schedule of assessment, please come forward to the mic at the table beside Rob, and Rob can set you up. Okay, seeing none. Betty or Councillor McKinnon, Councillor Brody, do you have any further questions regarding the schedule of assessment? Okay. And Dave, is there anything you want to add, or you're good?
I'm
You're
good, thank you.
Thank you. Rob, you're good? Okay, just covering everybody. Okay, if there is an appeal received, written or verbal, the Court of Revision, oh, you don't want that, okay. All right, sorry, these are complicated. Okay, it's recommended that the assessment contained in the report for the Locker Human Drain as prepared by R. Dobbin Engineering Inc. dated March 11th, 2025 and amended April 23rd, 2025 be confirmed as presented. Okay, moved by Councillor McKinnon, second by Councillor Brody. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we have a recommendation to adjourn the Court of Revision at 7:06 p.m. for the Locker Human Drain. Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Thanks, David.
Okay, thank you.
Yes, thank you, David. Okay, we have a recommendation to convene into the Committee of Adjustment at 7:07 p.m. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we have an application for a minor variance, A01-2025, Matthew Daniel Pito at address 2229 Patterson Drive. And I will turn this part of the meeting over to our planner, Ashley Sawyer.
Perfect. Thank you. I'm just going to share my screen here so you have a visual. All right. So the subject lands are located south of Murphy Drive, which is County Road number 77, and they are on the east side of Patterson Drive. They're approximately 0.97 acres in size, and surrounding uses are predominantly agricultural in nature. So this particular minor variance is to permit for the construction of a new detached garage for the owners to park their vehicles indoors. The existing dwelling does not have an attached garage, and there's currently no other accessory structures on the property for the owners to park their vehicles in. The garage itself will be approximately 1,200 square feet and will have an attached lean-to that will be approximately 320 square feet. Relief is required for the maximum permitted height as 5 meters is permitted and 6.55 meters is proposed. And for the maximum floor area as approximately 807 square feet is permitted, and 1,250 square feet is, 1,200 square feet is proposed for the garage itself. And then with the lean-to, it totals out to about 1,520 square feet. So the garage will be located at the rear of the existing dwelling and partially screened by mature trees on the property, as well as partially by the dwelling there. So it's just right where they are currently parking their vehicles in that red outline. The application was circulated in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, and we did receive comments from the Building Department and the Public Works Department, as well as St. Clair Region Conservation Authority, indicating no concerns, and no comments were received by members of the public prior to the submission of my report. So staff are of the opinion that the 4 minor variance tests set out in the Planning Act are satisfied, which is outlined in greater detail in my report, but I will just summarize them by saying that due to the location of the lands, the characteristics of the surrounding areas, the context of the proposal, staff are of the opinion that the increased height and floor area is not anticipated to negatively impact neighboring properties, and that this particular garage will be accessory to the existing dwelling. The structure will be located where the owners currently park their vehicles, and it will be set back behind the dwelling, partially screened by the dwelling and the trees. And my recommendation is that the variance be approved with the conditions that the relief only applies to the accessory structure as proposed, so not for future structures, and that the accessory structure be maintained at 1 story in height. And I'm here if you have any questions.
Thank you, Ashley. At this time, Matt, do you have any comments you want to add? You're good? Okay. Does council have any questions? Okay, go ahead, Councillor McKinnon.
Through you, Mayor Sue, to Matt. Just interested in why you configured the lot that way rather than going straight back, just to save agriculture property, was it?
Actually, we did.
Oh, okay. Okay. Okay.
So it's a bit of a slope, yeah. Yeah, it's a wonky thing, but yeah, and it doesn't take anything out of production, so good eye. Is there anyone in the gallery that has any comments or questions? Okay, seeing none then. Uh, any further council comments? None? Okay. Therefore, we have a recommendation, the application for minor variance A01-2025 that requests relief from section 5.1.3 to permit a maximum height of 6.55 meters and from section 7A.2.1D to permit for a maximum floor area of 1,200 square feet for the detached garage and a maximum floor area of 320 square feet for the attached unclosed lean-to be granted, subject to the following conditions. The relief solely applies to the accessory structure as shown on the site sketch submitted with the subject application. The proposed accessory structure shall be 1 story. And the reason being is the intent of the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe official plan is maintained. The intent of the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe zoning bylaws maintained. The variance is considered minor in nature, and the variance is desirable for the appropriate use and development of the land. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we have a recommendation to adjourn the Committee of Adjustment at 7:12 p.m. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, if anybody wants to sneak out, they can. Thanks, Matt. Okay, we have a recommendation that council convene into a public meeting at 7:12 p.m. Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Thanks. Okay, next up is an application for zoning bylaw amendment Z05-2025 regarding temporary use. The owners being Donna and Mark Teeple and their agent Duncan Patterson of Duncan Patterson Architecture regarding 9529 Townsend Line. And I'll turn this portion of the meeting over to our planner, Ashley.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. So I do have the location map just up in front of you. I would just note that for the purpose of this amendment, it should actually be labeled as additional residential unit as opposed to garden suite. They're just defined differently, and there's different temporary use permissions in the Planning Act. So the lands are located east of Wilson Road on the south side of Townsend Line, which is also known as County Road number 12, and they're approximately 1.03 acres in size. Surrounding uses are predominantly agricultural and rural residential in nature. There's currently a primary single detached dwelling on the property and a garage, and the lands are serviced by a privately owned well and septic with an existing driveway to Patterson Drive, and no new driveway is proposed to facilitate this zone amendment. So the purpose of the zone amendment application is to implement a temporary use permission on the subject lands to permit for the establishment of 1 detached additional residential unit that is approximately 676 square feet in size. The Planning Act authorizes the township to pass a temporary use bylaw for a maximum period of 3 years. And this is for uses that would otherwise be prohibited in your current zoning bylaw. And you do also have the option to grant farther extensions after that 3-year period is up. So as council is aware, at the end of 2024, the province replaced the provincial policy statement with an entirely new policy document called the Provincial Planning Statement. The emphasis on protecting prime agricultural areas was arguably strengthened. However, they did also allow municipalities to permit for 1 detached additional residential unit in the prime agricultural area, provided they comply with the minimum distance separation setbacks, are compatible with and would not hinder surrounding agricultural operations, have appropriate sewage and water services, address any public health and safety concerns, are of limited scale and are located within, attached, or in close proximity to the principal dwelling, and minimize the land taking out of agricultural production. So previously, these types of units were mandated by the province to be permitted as of right, but specifically within settlement areas that are on full municipal services. So they were not contemplated on a permanent basis in prime agricultural areas. And one of the key differences in these prime ag areas is that, again, these units are not permitted as of right, so we have to update these policy documents to permit for them. So the county official plan and Adelaide Metcalfe official plan are both in the process of being revised and updated to reflect this new provincial direction, and it will set the detailed parameters for these types of units. It has to be in line with what the province says, but it will be detailed. We anticipate that these updates will be completed this fall and winter, and then the zoning bylaw will be updated following that. So the temporary use zoning bylaw is being used as a solution to allow the owners to proceed with the ARU prior to the update to the official plans and zoning bylaw. And the owners are aware of the risk associated with this approach, as we ultimately do not know the final policy parameters that may be adopted by county council and then subsequently by local council. But I would just note that when evaluating the proposal strictly from the lens of the provincial planning statement, staff are of the opinion that the criteria set by the province appears to be met. There does not appear to be any minimum distance separation concerns. The subject lands are not a size or configuration that practically support agricultural operations, and they're not being currently used for that use. As well, the proposed unit does not take any agricultural lands out of production, and it will be clearly subordinate in scale and size to the primary dwelling, and will be located within 100 feet of that existing dwelling. So once the county and township policy documents are updated, this temporary ARU will either need to be converted to a permanent ARU that complies with the finalized policy parameters or obtain a renewal for this temporary use permission. I am hopeful that some type of transition regulation is included in these plan updates, which is something that you typically would see. And I would just note that this isn't the only kind of temporary use ARU in the county as it stands. So that transition regulation would really help facilitate all of these be ushered in as permanent if they meet the parameters that are set. So the application was circulated in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, and no concerns were noted by the Middlesex County Engineer, the Public Works Manager, or the Conservation Authority. County Emergency Services did outline that appropriate 911 addressing must align with municipal standards and be approved. And the building department noted no objection, but that a building permit would be required and potentially a septic permit as well. So the township also does require that the property owners enter into a temporary use agreement and that a security deposit of $10,000 be submitted. But my recommendation ultimately is that the application be approved, that the bylaw be read a first, second, and third and final time this evening, and that the property owners be directed to enter into a temporary use agreement with the township. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, Ashley. Is there, would the Teeples or their agent, Mr. Patterson, like to speak to this application? Or you're good? You don't need to. You're okay. Okay. And does council have any comments or questions? I just have one question and I just thought of it. And it's more just to educate me a little bit. When we ask for a $10,000 security deposit, are we actually asking for 10,000 cash, or do we take a letter of credit or a letter of guarantee from the bank for that? Or is that a Johnny question, or would yeah. I'm just curious.
Yeah, it's typically paid in cash, and then we send back a check once everything is satisfied.
Okay, thank you. All right. Anybody in the gallery have anything? I don't think there's anybody here to answer any questions. All right, seeing that we have no further comments, I guess, okay. We have a recommendation that the application for zoning bylaw amendment Z05-2025 be approved, and that the implementing bylaw be read a first, second, and third final time, and further that the property owners enter into a temporary use agreement with the township and post the required $10,000 security deposit. And the reasons are it's consistent with the PPS. It's in conformity with the County of Middlesex official plan will be maintained, and conformity with the Township of Adelaide official plan would also be maintained. Conformity with the Township of Adelaide zoning bylaw would also be maintained. So that's moved by Councillor McKinnon. I saw your hand go up earlier. Seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, moving right along. Next item up is the application for zoning bylaw amendment Z06-2025. Temporary use, the owner is Van Arts Farm Limited and the agent is Josie Campbell regarding 1901 Langdon Drive. Okay, and Josie, welcome to the meeting. I think you're online there. I'll turn the meeting over to Ashley again, please.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. So as noted, the subject lands have a municipal address of 1901 Langan Drive. They are located east of Kerwood Road, also known as County Road number 6, and they are on the south side of Langan Drive. So this application is to temporarily allow the owners to live in the existing single detached dwelling while a new single detached dwelling is being constructed. And the existing dwelling would have to be removed within 2 years or upon occupancy of the new dwelling, whichever occurs first. There is currently one single detached dwelling, one drive shed, and one chicken barn on the lands, as well as agricultural lands and crop production. The lands are currently serviced by a privately owned well and septic system, and there is an existing access. No new driveway is proposed to accommodate the new dwelling. So the new dwelling will be approximately 4,000 square feet in size and located just to the east of the existing dwelling. Based on the sketch submitted with the application, the new dwelling is proposing to meet the required zoning provisions. The application was circulated in accordance with the requirements of the Planning Act, and no concerns were noted by the Building Department, Public Works Department, or the County Engineer. County Emergency Services did note a standard comment that 911 signage must be maintained to municipal standards, and based on the provided, no new address needs to be assigned at this time. No comments were submitted by members of the public prior to the submission of my report. And similar to the last application, the Planning Act authorizes the township to pass a temporary use bylaw for a maximum period of 3 years, and extensions can be granted of not more than 3 years each if needed. But upon expiry of the bylaw, that temporary use essentially falls off the land and reverts back to the original zoning. So the proposed bylaw this evening would allow for 2 years, as that is consistent with past township practice and is generally more than a sufficient amount of time to be granted occupancy. And my recommendation is that the application be approved, the implementing bylaw be read a first, second, and third and final time this evening, and that the owners be directed to enter into a temporary use agreement with the township and post the required $10,000 security. Thank you.
Josie, did you want to add anything or you're good?
No, I'm just kind of here to observe and answer any questions. So all good.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. And there's no one in the gallery, so does council have any questions or comments? Okay, seeing we have none, then we have a recommendation that the application for zoning bylaw amendment Z06-2025 be approved and the implementing bylaw be read a first, second, third, and final time. And further, that the property owners enter into a temporary use agreement with the township and post the required $10,000 security deposit to ensure the removal of the existing single detached dwelling. The reasons are it's consistent with the provincial policy statement. It conforms with both the county's official plan as well as Adelaide Metcalfe's, and it conforms with the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe's zoning bylaw. So could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, that convenes our public meeting, so we will adjourn that at 7:23 p.m. and reconvene into regular session of council. Could I have a mover for that? Moved by Councillor Brody, second by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Ashley, thanks so much for attending. You had extremely good focus with your dog barking in the background. I commend you for that. I know what that's like.
Thank you.
Thanks for your time. Okay, next up are the audited financial statements, and I'll turn this portion of the meeting over to Scott Westlake, or is that how you pronounce? Or is it Jennifer? Or maybe you're going to tag team. I don't know. We'll let you guys figure that out. So we'll turn the meeting over to you. Thank you.
Perfect. Thank you very much. So I am Jen Buchanan. I have with me manager Scott Westlaken. We've been working on the Adelaide Metcalfe audit for a number of years together, and we're pleased to be here tonight before council to present the December 31st, 2024 audited financial statements. I am going to walk through the financial statements. I will just do highlights, but of course, if there are any questions, you can either interrupt me as I go through, or we can take questions at the end as well. And after I go through the financial statements, there are a few other things I am required to share with council. No bad news, I promise. So I'll also have to do that as part of my presentation. I am going to share my screen now. There we go. So these are the financial statements for the Corporation of the Township of Adelaide Metcalfe for the year ended December 31st, 2024. I'm turning to management's responsibility for financial reporting. So this is just a reminder that these financial statements have been prepared in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards, and that ultimately the chief administrator officer and the treasurer are responsible for the financial statements, and they will sign off on this letter after the financial statements are approved. Turning the page, we get to the independent auditor's report. So this is what you've engaged us on behalf of Graham Scott Ends to do, is to provide an opinion on the financial statements. It is addressed to the members of council, inhabitants, and ratepayers of the corporation of the township of Adelaide Metcalfe. And it simply says that we have audited the financial statements of the corporation of the township of Adelaide Metcalfe, which comprise the statement of financial position as at December 31st, 2024, statement of operations and accumulated surplus, statement of change in net financial assets, and statement of cash flows for the year then ended, and notes the financial statements, including a summary of significant accounting policies. In our opinion, the municipality's financial statements present fairly in all material respects the financial position of the municipality as at December 31st, 2024, the results of its operations and its cash flows for the year then ended in accordance with Canadian public sector accounting standards. So that is what we like to refer to as a clean audit opinion, which means these financial statements are not materially misstated. The rest of the auditor's report goes through the responsibilities of management. So that would be represented by your CAO and treasurer, as well as those charged with governance, represented by council, and then the laundry list of things that I, as your auditor, are responsible for as well. Assuming these financial statements are approved tonight, they will be dated May 20th, 2025. Turning to the statement of financial position. So this is a listing of the assets and liabilities of the township as at December 31st. Again, I will just highlight some of the year-over-year changes. In general, cash is relatively consistent, a little higher than previous year. But as you can see, that's really a timing thing because accounts payable is also higher than previous year. Investments is a little bit higher. That's the reinvested GIC interest. And then we have taxes receivable. Within that, there is one large overdue amount, and I believe that property will be going to tax sale. Accounts receivable is a little bit lower, and that really is impacted by drain work as an example, as well as timing. So total financial assets there, $15,481,000. Turning to financial liabilities, the bulk of this $2.9 million that's due at December 31st is about $2 million for the road construction project, the big one during the year, Mala Ferry, I believe. So that is $2 million of that. So other than that, it is a comparable balance to previous year. Deferred revenue. So within deferred revenue, there's different grant funding, such as gas tax that is available for use. Last year, there was a higher amount deferred, and there were opportunities to spend those deferred amounts during the year, primarily on capital projects. Asset retirement obligation. So we talked about this one a lot last year because it was a new PSAB accounting standard last year. So this is really just the showing on the balance sheet the amount that's anticipated that it will cost for remediating the sites of the landfill. And we'll go into that a little bit more on note 12. So total financial liabilities, $4,070,000. In terms of your non-financial assets, the biggest one is, of course, tangible capital assets. And there were a few additions in the year that were greater than the amortization expense taken, the bulk of which was some large road projects, as well as some equipment and vehicle purchases. So total non-financial assets, $22,213,000. So you get to your accumulated surplus of $33,624,000. Go to the statement of operations and accumulated surplus. The first reminder I'll give you is that we have taken council's approved budget, which is disclosed in note 19, and we've converted it into a PSAB budget. So that means adjustments for things like amortization, fund transfers, as well as capital items. So those have been adjusted out of the budget to make it comparable to the numbers that we're presenting. In general, many of the revenue amounts are comparable to budget. So the first sort of item I'll refer to as being a little bit different is investment income. So higher than budgeted in prior year due to the favorable GIC rates as an example. Penalties and interest on taxes, we see a bit of an increase there. But as I mentioned, there is one older tax receivable balance. So correspond. And then within other, one of the largest amounts in there relates to the development charges that have come into revenue this year in conjunction with the large road project. So they come into revenue now because the money has been spent on the road project now, and they'll be collected in the future, which we'll see in a subsequent note. We also have a gain on disposal of capital assets. So that's just a little cash gain compared to the depreciated value of a couple pieces of equipment. So total revenues, 7.6 million. Going down to expenses, again, we see that things are relatively comparable to budget. Waterworks and sewer is a little bit less, some less legal fees during the year. Recreation and cultural services is a little bit less than prior year, and significantly lower than budget. And then agriculture, so that's where the drain work primarily goes. Last year there was a recovery of previous written off amounts, and so this year it's just back to a more normalized amount. So total expenses there, 5.8 million for an annual surplus for PSAB purposes of 1,828,000. So I'm just going to pause. I don't see any questions, so I will keep going. Statement of change in net financial assets. So this is a bit of a repeat of some of the information we've already discussed. We get to the statement of cash flows. Again, it's going to be a bit of a repeat, but it is a nice place to see the acquisition of tangible capital assets, so how much was spent during the year. And obviously 2024 was a big investment year for the municipality in capital assets. So we can see that there. Turning to the notes to the financial statements, the first note I'll draw your attention to is note 1, change in accounting policies. So last year there were a few new accounting policies required under PSAB. This year there's just one. It's PS 3400 for revenue. We did consider it in relation to the revenue streams of Adelaide Metcalfe and found that there would be no impact on your financial reporting, but you have technically adopted the new standard, so you are in compliance with that. In terms of the rest of the accounting policies here in note 2, there's been no changes year over year. Last year, there was a few changes relating to the asset retirement obligations and the financial instruments. We get down further in the notes, taxes receivable. So this is just where you can see that breakout, and you can see that the increase really does relate to the arrears taxes receivable. Under accounts receivable, you can see a further breakout of the amounts that are due to the municipality. Deferred revenue in note 6. So again, this is where last year there were a number of amounts, and some of them were spent during the year. And this is where you can also see that impact of that development charges that I was mentioning. So basically this little paragraph here explains what's happening. The municipality has borrowed money from future development charges to fund certain qualifying capital assets in advance of receiving the development charges as allowed under the Development Charges Act 1997. And these amounts are paid back, including the prescribed rate of interest. So that's just how that shows up on the financial statements. Note 8 is consistent with previous years. It does relate to outstanding legal actions and is just indicating that the final outcome of outstanding claims cannot be determined at this time. However, management believes that the ultimate disposition of these matters will not materially exceed the amounts recorded in these financial statements. Net long-term liabilities. So here you can see the total amount that the municipality owes, in this case to the province, and then within that amount there are tile drainage loans that are assumed by the individual. So this is the net amount that the municipality owes. Okay. Turning to note 12, asset retirement obligations, landfill closure. So this note and this style of disclosure was new last year to get in line with the new accounting standards. So there hasn't been a change to the standards again, which is great. The main thing I'm just going to point out is the estimated liability represents the sum of discounted future cash flows for closure and post-closure activities. So that's 802,000. And the reserve that's currently set aside is 448,000. So no concerns, that's just required disclosure there. Tangible capital assets is the summary. And again, you can see the additions there primarily to roadways. Okay, within accumulated surplus, you can see what's in the general revenue fund, the invested and tangible capital assets, and then the reserves set aside for specific purpose, as well as reserve funds set aside for specific purpose. So you can see the details there. Just skipping over some of the more obvious note disclosures. We get to the budget figures in note 19. So this is the approved budget, and then we make it into a PSAB budget. And then the final part of the statements at the end is the schedule of segmented disclosure. So again, it's just breaking down the revenues and expenses into their various categories. So that is a whirlwind trip through the financial statements. Are there any questions? Anything I can go back and address?
Okay, are there any questions? I think it's nice, Jen, that most of us have had the benefit of sitting through the budget committee to understand how we come up with the budget we did and how it lands as to the actuals. And I think it's interesting, as much as we all hate DCs when we have to pay them ourselves, you see the importance of having them and how impactful the number is when you see a negative in that account, and that because development has to pay for development. So those are just comments. I have a question, and I just thought of it. We see in 2023, the recycling was like around 165, and we're 4 or something this year. So is that because we categorized it different? Because we were using actual allocating FTE towards staffing the landfill and backfilling, and did we allocate dollars?
Sorry, so you're looking at the garbage collection and disposal amount
Yeah,
here.
152, sorry.
Yep.
Yeah, like
No,
that's
I
a
just had
big
to
jump.
find where you were talking about.
Yeah, big jump year over year. So I'm just wondering if it's because we started doing things a couple of years ago a little differently, where we were allocating true cost to each department. So are
So
we
this actually
allocating?
relates to the asset retirement obligation changes. So it's not real cash in a sense.
But that's
It
only
re-
68,000 or 69,000 in land closure, setting
so
aside dollars.
So not the actual reserve amount that's set aside, but how we have to account for the liability and the accretion expense. So that's how the liability grows over time, which is not related to the cash expense that the municipality incurs.
That's right. Okay, thank you for clarifying.
You're
Perfect.
welcome. Okay.
Anybody else? Okay, you gotta have a question.
Okay, I will.
Okay, well, thanks, and the staff cooperated, and the CRA remittances are all where they're supposed to be. That's all we care about. No, we care about a lot of stuff, but we do want to make sure they're getting looked after.
Yeah, no
So-
problem. Yeah, Scott, do you want to touch on the staff?
I think another good year under kind of the audit under the belt, really working with Johnny and his team, Jessica, and then also Morgan, kind of periodically throughout. We're moving now that I guess kind of we're at this stage where we're presenting to council. We'll be working on the FIR to get that prepared and hopefully submitted by the May 31st deadline. So getting our staff kind of involved in jumping into that now that we have more, finalized statements and potentially approved as of today.
Thanks, Scott. My final comments are really going to relate to the audit findings letter. So we are required to issue an audit findings letter in conjunction with the audit. The good news is it doesn't have any issues highlighted in it, but I am still required to tell you that. So that means no disagreements with management, no suggested changes to your accounting policies, no unrecorded misstatements, no significant control deficiencies. So I did also want to share that with council as well. And that sort of concludes the results of our audit. Is there any other questions for us as your auditors?
Any other questions? Jen, you'll attest, I'm sure you'll agree with me, Johnny treats this like it's his own money, which is good. So
He is
we're
a very dedicated
appreciative of that,
employee. You are
Johnny.
lucky.
Okay, seeing that we don't have any other questions or comments, we have a recommendation that council approve the 2024 audited financial statements as presented. Could I have a mover and a seconder? Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Enjoy the rest
Yeah,
of the meeting.
thanks for everything. Take care. Have a good evening.
Bye.
Have a good one.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thanks, Scott. Okay, is there anything in the consent agenda that anyone wants pulled out for discussion? Seeing none then, could I have a motion to approve or to receive? Those are 7F? Operating budget.
Yeah, and that lights so 7, 8, 7 happens.
Okay. All right, if nothing wants to be pulled from the consent agenda, we have a recommendation that council receive and file items 7A through 7F listed under the heading of consent agenda for May 20th, 2025 be adopted as recommended. Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, we're now on section 8. We have a request to support a resolution from the municipality of Chatham-Kent regarding Bill 5, risks to community. Is there any desire to support that? 8B, a resolution from the Township of Coburg requesting support for regarding Ontario Works financial assistance rates. A request from the town of Godrich to support a resolution for the rejection of President rejection of President Trump's rhetoric regarding the annexation of Canada and trade tariffs. From the Township of West Lincoln, a request to support a resolution to support of Canadian economy. All righty. We have a recommendation that council receive and file correspondence items 8A through 8D. Moved by Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor? And that's carried. Okay, next up are the staff reports, and the first item is the ward drain to accept a petition and appoint an engineer. And I'll turn this portion of the meeting over to our drainage boss, Rob.
Everyone, thank you. This is a petition for major improvement to a drain. Specifically, it's Pikeside Road or County Road 45 between Mullaferry and Napperton. There is concerns from the county that increased volumes of roads are eating away at the stability of the road foreslope. And there's evidence that is the case as well. There's some downstream sedimentation that might be affecting the surface flow of the drain that we would like to look at the same time. Basically, we are recommending that we appoint an engineer, Reed Associates, to do a report.
Hey, does anyone have any questions for Rob? I just have one. Is this that section of the road that washed out when it was newly paved? That one there, and so it needs to be beefed up? Oh, okay, so yeah, it's right there. Okay. So it definitely needs work. Okay, no other, go ahead. No, you'd like to move it? Okay. So a recommendation that council accept the petition for a major improvement to the ward municipal drain submitted by the Road Authority for Middlesex County under Section 78 of the Drainage Act. Further, that council appoints Spreet and Associates to produce a report to improve the ward drain in the geographic township of Adelaide under Section 78 of the Drainage Act. Could I have a mover? Betty Ann, you did. Councillor McKinnon, seconded by Councillor Brody. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up is 9B, the 2024 Treasurer's Investment Report, and I'll turn this section of the meeting over to our Treasurer, Johnny Pereira.
Thank you, Mayor Clerk. Through to Council. The purpose of this report is just to comply with the annual reporting requirements under the Township's investment policy and Section 418 of the Municipal Act and related regulations. So this report just highlights the township's investment activity for the year, outlining the performance, total returns, and just a transparent picture of the investment activity for the township. So as shown in the report there, the township had no new investments in 2024, as the township did enter into a number of GICs spanning over the course of greater than 1 year in 2023, taking advantage of those high rates at that time. We did enter into those GICs that the interest earnings would automatically be reinvested to lock in at those same high rates. So in 2024, the township did generate $283,000 of investment income compared to $227,000 in 2023. The township also has a very competitive interest rate on cash balances at Libro, which is the Bank of Canada rate less 1.5%. So the township did earn $277,000 on cash balances not invested in 2024 versus $424,000 in 2023. So we did see a drop there. That's with the decreased rates through the year and also a lower average cash balance throughout the year as we were cash flowing some capital projects. So overall, the investments held by the township in 2024 were consistent with the investment policy. The recommendation is to receive the report for information. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Any questions for our treasurer? I'd just like to make a comment. Since you've been using a very thoughtful cash management plan, I think we've been able to pick up some interest, and it's reflected in the financial statements we saw tonight. So that's a nice improvement since you've arrived, Johnny. That's a gold star for you. Okay. And no other comments? Then we have a recommendation that the 2024 Treasurer's Investment Report be received for information. Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, next up is 9C. We're going to talk about the council vacancy I referred to at the opening of this meeting to replace our former councillor, Aaron Nordoff. I'll turn this section of the meeting over to our legislative clerk, Michael Barnier.
Thank you, Mayor Clark. Members of council, we did discuss that this report would come forward. So on April 17th, we received an email from Councillor Nordoff regrettably resigning as of May 9th as a result of moving out. So at the first available council meeting after resignation, we're to declare the seat vacant. And this report outlines the options available. So the Municipal Act, certainly the first option is to hold a by-election, and it's very prescriptive in the Municipal Act and the Municipal Elections Act how to go through this procedure. If council does decide to go through a by-election, I'll bring a subsequent report back outlining that whole process with the costs involved, and we'd have to likely engage through our online voting vendor to get that process started. The other options are appointment procedure. So the Municipal Act is not very prescriptive on how that appointment works, but we've seen models throughout Ontario, and I just outlined the three. It's to appoint an elector who received the most votes in the 2022 municipal election, but not elected. In this case, it would be Gerald Sanders. So we would reach out to Gerald if he was still interested. And obviously, if Gerald was not interested in that option, we'd have to come back to council to decide an alternative route. The next option under appointment is a call through for applications through a selection process. Kind of outlined a little bit how we proceed with that, but it would be announcement through the Middlesex Banner, our social media, likely giving a couple weeks for people to submit applications. Morgan and I would work on questions and make sure that the eligibility criteria is part of those questions. And then we'd have to meet at a subsequent council to decide on the applications. Now, we have to do this by July 19th, and our meeting in July is the 21st, so likely a special meeting to accommodate that. The next option is a direct appointment. So like I said, there's no established requirements, but council could meet, we'd figure out a process to directly appoint somebody. I think it's been done just recently in Southwest Middlesex of a direct appointment. So we'll reach out to see how the best process they did that. But likely at a council meeting, a closed session to decide that as well. So the financial impact on any of these decisions, while the alternative election, like a by-election, we'd have to determine cost, but it would be, from my understanding, about the same as a full municipal election, because you're still going through a lot of the processes for software and electorate. So the other options are more about just advertisements in the banner, and that's about $300 to $400. And then advertisement after it's completed. So I presented the 4 options for council to consider. With no recommended option, as this is likely strictly a council decision and not the clerk's recommendation in this regard. So I'm happy to answer any questions, but you have the 4 options ahead of you.
Okay, thank you. I'm only one voice, but I think given that there's only a year and a half left, I think it's a waste of taxpayer money to hold a by-election. And it's a lot from a capacity level for staff. But once again, I'm just one voice. So I would think that at that point, it takes it down to 3 options, but I open the floor to my colleagues for their comments. Councilor Brody?
Through you, Sue. I agree with your comment there. I do like the option 2. It's a very low cost. We can see what kind of interest there is. Basically have a discussion among ourselves and look at it that way. I mean, and you're right, it's a short time left really to hold a by-election and everything else. It might be and very costly. So, but I do like the transparency of option 2 than just option 3, where you're just picking one. And
Councilor McKinnon, your comments?
I'm in agreement with both you and Mike. Excuse me. Option 2 would be my choice, given that the first option, we would have too many conflicts of interest because of having relatives on the council, and the one councillor was ineligible to be looked at because of not fulfilling his financial requirements. So anyways, I'm for option 2.
Okay, it sounds like we're all.
Sorry, through the mayor,
Sorry, go ahead.
he did fulfill his, yes, sorry.
Okay. Okay, it sounds like we're all in agreement. So could I have a motion regarding option 2? I think the 3 of us are thinking the same thing. So moved by Councillor Brody that council declares Councillor Nordhoff's seat on council vacant due to resignation, and that council resolves that option 2, appointment by selection process, be used to fill the vacant council seat. Further, that council direct the clerk to proceed with organization and advertisement of the selected process. Seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor? And that's carried. Thank you. Okay, we've got all the bylaws there ahead of you, before you. We have a recommendation that bylaw, hang on, I think I forgot other business. Just let me go back. Any other business before I jump to the end here? None? Okay. I think the only thing is it before or after our next meeting? Oh, I guess we have a meeting before the ball tournament, don't we? So we'll talk it up then. All righty. We have a recommendation that bylaw 23 of 2025, the zoning bylaw amendment, temporary use up for 9529 Townsend Line, bylaw 24 of 2025, zoning bylaw amendment, temporary use, 1901 Langdon Drive, bylaw 25 of 2025, the temporary use agreement for Teeples, bylaw 26 of 2025, the temporary use agreement on Van Art Farms Limited, and bylaw 27 of 2025 confirming May 20th, 2025 received first, second, and third and final readings. Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor, and that's carried. And could I have a motion to adjourn at 7:55 PM? Moved by Councillor Brody, seconded by Councillor McKinnon. All in favor, and that's carried. Thank you.